Hello, my name is Trish Grooms, and I'm one of the TSD counselors here at Texas School for the Deaf. I'm here to talk with you about suicide prevention training. This training is required. We'll be reviewing our best practices for addressing suicide prevention and reporting here at Texas School for the Deaf. So, why is this training required? The legislature passed a bill known as House Bill 2186, also called the Jason Flatts Act. This was passed in 2015. Due to this bill, we are required to provide training on suicide prevention on an annual basis. And the reason why this bill came about is because we had a student in Fairfield ISD who took their life. His name was Jonathan Childers. He was 15 years old. And many people were unaware and quite taken aback by his suicide. And his father felt it was very important that all school districts had training to be able to identify the warning signs and any other things to help identify and help provide prevention and saving of lives. So now we'll talk about best practices and things that TSC encourages you to do. One is review incidents, develop policies and procedures, as well as establish prevention training program. This is something that all schools should have. The good news is that Texas School for the Deaf has all three in place, and we are always looking at ways in which we can improve our systems, make sure that we are staying up with current trends. Also, best practices relates to schools needing to have bullying and suicide prevention program for our students. A bullying program is related to what students need to know, what teachers and staff need to know, and how that relates to suicide prevention for both students and staff. It's strongly encouraged. According to the Texas 84th Legislature, Texas school districts must include suicide prevention within their campus improvement plans. New employees are required to receive suicide prevention training, as well as annual training should be provided for all existing employees. Another best practice includes that all direct and indirect comments about suicide or self-harm statements or any behavior should be reported. It must be reported. Every student, every time. Texas Suicide Safer Schools, which is related to research and other data that has been pulled to help you understand better about the severity of this problem. The problem is real. It is believed to be the second or even third leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 24 nationwide. Here in the state of Texas, it's the second leading cause. Suicide numbers are likely underreported, and that's due to the social stigma. Youth suicide is a serious public health concern and has continued to increase in recent years. And part of that increase is due to social media, and it's starting to impact younger and younger age students. Did you know that in the United States, more people die by suicide than homicide? Most adolescent suicides occur after school hours and in the teen's home. Most adolescent attempts are triggered by interpersonal conflicts, such as a breakup, bullying, or some sort of intense argument. Not all adolescents admit their intent directly, and when suicidal intent or risk is detected, lives can be saved. The leading methods of suicide in youth between ages 10 to 24 include the following: firearms, which is the most common method, suffocation, typically by hanging, as well as poisoning or overdosing on medication. Firearms and suffocation are the two most prevalent. or leading methods. Some groups are at a higher risk. Males are more likely to die by suicide than females. The reason being that males typically are more bold in their method, such as a firearm, which means they're more likely to die by suicide. Females are more likely to attempt suicide, but may vacillate or be uncertain. They may do some superficial cutting or something like that. So oftentimes they may attempt but not actually die by suicide. And among these groups, in terms of racial and ethnic groups nationwide, American Native or Alaskan Native youth have the highest suicide rates. If you think about Indian reservations across the United States, there are high suicide risks there due to poverty, lack of resources, network or connection may be lacking. Also, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth report suicide attempts at a significantly higher rate than that of their heterosexual peers. The Suicide Prevention Resource Center, or SPRC, believes that suicide prevention is most effective when there is a comprehensive approach that employs 7 key strategies. The first strategy is it's important to identify those who are at risk. That means we need to be familiar with our students. Perhaps we recognize some are under high stress. Perhaps they come from a history or background of abuse. By identifying those students, we can provide more supports for them. Number 2, increasing their help seeking. And what this means, for example, here at TSD, we really need to work on our school becoming a culture in which it's focused on help seeking. Many people hesitate or don't feel safe or perhaps don't feel comfortable asking for help and therefore refrain from asking for some. So increasing that culture of it's okay to ask for help and we're here to help you and help each other. Number 3, provide access to mental health services. And that's for everyone. On a nationwide basis, there are limited resources for mental health access. However, we do have a responsibility to provide access to what we do have here. Number 4, establish crisis procedures. And that's what we have in place currently, which includes training, how do we do things, what do we do for follow-up, etc. So continue with those procedures. Number 5, restricting access to lethal means. For example, if you know your student is a day student and at home, perhaps their family is a hunting family and they have guns in the home or rifles, other types of firearms, that may be an opportunity for you to discuss with the family about how you can prevent the student from having access to that, including knives or other lethal means. So it's just about being aware. Number 6, enhancing life skills. That is something that many of our students do not have a range of life skills under their belt. And it's something we need to work more on, providing life skills to our students because many of them have gaps in those skills. Number 7, promoting social networking and connections. The more that we involve everyone here at TSD, the more they feel safe. And it's important that they feel that they have a connection here at school. So those are the 7 strategies that are considered key to preventing suicide. So now let's discuss risk factors. And what are they? Risk factors are different things that kids or individuals in general may experience that can really cause a lot of stress for that individual. The more stress that people have, the more that they start to feel hopeless or feel lonely. And so this list here is some examples of different risk factors. Many of these are experiences that our students have had. One is bullying or severe humiliation. Another is a history of trauma or abuse. Also, a family history of suicide. Mental or physical health illnesses. Perhaps someone has cancer, they begin to feel hopeless, and that can lead to thoughts of suicide. Number 5, substance abuse. And number 6, stressful life events. For example, many things may be happening at home simultaneously. Perhaps they don't have enough food at home, they don't have enough financial resources, and things like that can be considered risk factors. In addition to the aforementioned ones, also we have a romantic breakup. Number 7 is a severe argument with family or friends. Number 8 is a recent death or loss of a loved one. Number 9 is school failures. Number 10, loss of a dream. So, for example, perhaps they were looking forward to being on the basketball team and they didn't make it. That could be a risk factor. Also, severe school discipline. Some additional risk factors are arrest, easy access to lethal methods, meaning firearms, knives, or others. Number 14, exposure to suicidal behavior of others. And what that means is that perhaps they have had frequent exposure to that. For example, if you've seen the movie 13 Reasons Why, which is on Netflix, that really seemed to glorify suicide. And our students may view that and not fully understand it, which could lead to a risk factor for themselves. Number 15 is a sense of being a burden to others, as well as profound sense of loneliness. Number 17, reckless behavior such as promiscuity or impulsivity, that type of behavior activities. So again, promiscuity or doing things that are very impulsive and quite dangerous as a result. Number 18, that feeling of being trapped. Number 19, anxiety or agitation. And number 20, sleep difficulties, especially insomnia. The more lacking sleep is, the more it can lead to thoughts of suicide. Now, I want to explain a little bit more about risk factors. For a history of trauma and abuse, according to a recent study which was conducted in April 2012, approximately 1/3 of adults who were previously physically abused in their childhood have seriously considered taking their own life. This rate is 5 times higher than adults who were not physically abused during childhood. 5 times is significant. When you consider our children and those who have abuse or history of trauma, that can have long-lasting effects on them, which is why it's so important to pay attention to history of trauma and abuse in our students, because that is a high risk. Bullying. Students who are involved in bullying, whether it be the victim or perpetrator, are at a significantly higher risk for depression and suicide. Oftentimes, people would assume that the bully themselves is not at risk. However, bullying is a sign that they themselves are not feeling well and start to put down others as a result of trying to make themselves feel better. And so the factors going on in their life that lead them to bullying others are factors for them. So we have to look at both the victim and the perpetrator. Also, the risk of bullying through social media can exacerbate the instability and hopelessness in youth who are already dealing with stress. Social media, many students have access to social media 24 hours a day without break. Prior to social media's existence, students may experience bullying perhaps only during school hours. Then they would go home, have their life outside of school. However, now, with the involvement of social media, the bullying may not cease. It may happen during school hours and after school hours. And that constant exposure can lead to depression and thoughts of suicide. We are seeing more of that now than we have previously. Okay, disconnectedness. What is that? This refers to students who are not connected to school, perhaps classmates or other school activities. They just don't have a connection there. It can be students who do not have friends or rarely volunteer in class activities and are isolated. If you see students like that, it is so important to reach out and work on developing that rapport to help them have that feeling of connectedness at TSD. That's a big part of our mission, anyways, and we have a responsibility to ensure all of our students have that connection. Burdensomeness. Whenever students view themselves as a burden to others, and they believe that their family or school would be better off without them, that refers to burdensomeness. Another is students who are engaging in reckless behavior or who have unexplained injuries or engage in any type of self-injury. An important tip is to ensure that students are receiving discipline consequences and have support, and the counselor is updated as this occurs. Because with a consequence, they can feel that they're a burden to others. And so it's important that they have support during that period, knowing that discipline is not the end of the world. It isn't the end, that's part of a process of learning. So now moving on to warning signs. So we referred risk factors, things that go on in life. Warning signs are more focused related to specifically suicide and what can lead to it. This is not a comprehensive list, but this is a handful of items to consider. One is talking about suicide. That's an obvious risk sign. One is making statements about feeling hopeless, helpless, or worthless. Another warning sign. Another is deepening depression or a history of mental illness. Preoccupation with death, such as including a lot about death in their writing or their drawings, dark or sad things in their drawing and writing. Number 6 is taking unnecessary risks or exhibiting self-destructive behavior. Number 7 is engaging in non-suicidal self-injury, such as cutting or burning. And this does not always mean that they are suicidal, but it can lead to that. So it's important to keep an eye out for those behaviors. Number 8, being victimized by bullying. Remember, both the victim and perpetrator are both at risk. Out of character behavior or dramatic changes in their behavior. For example, typically maybe a student comes to school, they have nice hygiene, they keep themselves neat and tidy, they're a responsible student, they exhibit motivation, and then perhaps the following week that exact same student comes in, they seem to not be taking care of themselves, their hygiene is lacking, they demonstrate a lack of motivation or withdrawn attitude. That is a warning sign, and it's important to keep that in mind. Number 10, a loss of interest in things that they once cared about. Perhaps they are previously involved in sports and they start to drop out of things or shirk their involvement. Number 11, visiting or calling people that one cares about in a way that hints at saying goodbye. It may be an indirect manner of doing so. Maybe saying things like, I will miss you, or I've enjoyed having you as a friend. Things like that that demonstrate that they could be preparing to say goodbye. Number 12, making arrangements, meaning setting their affairs in orders, making plans. For example, if they have a pet, they may tell their parents, If I'm gone, would you take care of my animal? Things like that. Number 13, giving away prized possessions, perhaps a ring or clothing items or something that they really care about that they start giving away to friends. Number 14, exposure to suicide. Kids who have any relative or family members that have died by suicide, that can lead to a higher risk for that child. Protective factors. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have risk factors, we have warning signs that we've reviewed, and now protective factors. This is a list of things that really can help balance out some of those stressors in life. So, for example, positive relationships with family, peers, and their community. The more positive relationships they have, the more they feel comfortable asking for help, having that sense of connectedness, and that they are okay. Positive self worth, as well as impulse control. A lack of impulse control can really exacerbate some of those feelings. So, positive self worth ties into that. Positive connections to school and extracurricular participation. So, for example, athletics, clubs, other things like that. Involvement in those types of activity are always better. Access and support for those who reach out for help. Lack of access to suicidal means. Access to a variety of clinical interventions. Here at TSD, we have counselors, we have the health center, we have access to community resources as well. Early detection and intervention. Coping and problem solving skills. That's one area that we recognize, along with those life skills, that many of our students may not possess. So, the more of those coping skills, problem solving abilities they have, the more likely they are able to problem solve through some of those things that come up in life. Last but not least, most importantly, is you. All of us here are an important factor in protecting our students and preventing suicide. Suicide planning, meaning the greater the planning revealed by the youth, the greater the risk for suicidal behavior. For example, if you find a suicide note, what they would do, how they would do it, explaining why, perhaps apologizing, that is a very significant sign of danger, and intervention needs to happen right away. Suicide note, again, a very significant sign of danger. Texting or cyberspace, statements or pictures, those should all be taken very seriously. Report them every time, regardless. Suicide thoughts. So, suicidal threats. That is estimated to be up to 80% of all suicide victims have given some sort of clue regarding their intentions. For example, a direct threat would be, I want to kill myself. I want to go to South Congress and allow a car to run me over. An indirect example is more like, I wish I could fall asleep and never wake up. Or I wish I could go to heaven and see my grandparents. The next is self-abuse or self-harm, such as cutting or hurting oneself on purpose. On purpose means it looks like a planful cutting, not impulsive. Or if you see someone who is angry and then they hit the wall out of anger, that's more of an impulsive decision versus someone doing repetitive or a planful, intentional self harm. About 80 to 90% of people who have died by suicide express their intentions to someone. All suicidal statements should be taken seriously. Every time you see or observe a student saying something, you must report it. Every student, every time, you must report it. Our responsibility, as well as your responsibility, school districts have been found liable for not offering mental health information and support, providing inadequate supervision of at-risk students, which means it's very important for us to be supervising our students, as well as failing to notify parents when their children were suicidal. We have a responsibility. It's not yours, it's not mine, it's all of us. Be aware of what students are saying. It may be that they feel their problem is inescapable. Maybe they can't sleep or eat or do their work. They can't get out of a continued state of sadness. They can't see the possibility of change. Or they can't see themselves as worthy. It is important that you report any of those concerns to the counselors so they can become involved with the situation. Now, I'll talk briefly about TSD's suicide prevention policy. Our suicide prevention policy states that all staff members are required to immediately refer a student to the health center for a screening or evaluation if the student makes a comment or gesture that they want to die or kill themselves. This also includes all self-abusive behaviors, such as cutting or burning. They must be referred to the health center. Report all safety concerns. School personnel have a duty to warn. There's no confidentiality in this type of instance. If a student makes a suicidal comment or is self-abusive, there is no confidentiality to maintain because of their life safety. When in doubt, ask the counselors, and they'd be able to tell you yes or no if a referral is necessary. Now, this is the referral process. If you witness a comment, work with your next door classroom teacher, hall monitor, principal, or supervisor to find someone to cover your class or responsibilities. Then escort the student to the health center. While there in the health center, you'll need to complete 2 forms. The first one being the Suicide Assessment Incident Report, the second one being the Suicide Behavioral Checklist. Both must be completed. Then stay with the student until the screener or assessor arrives. Never leave the student alone. Again, those 2 forms must always be completed. The first form, which is the Suicide Assessment Incident Report, includes who saw or who told you about the incident, what happened, meaning what did you see, what did the student do, and also what was happening prior to the incident. This is what the form looks like. So there's 3 areas that must be filled out, and you must complete the entire form and then sign at the bottom. And the second form is a behavioral checklist. You can circle through, and if you don't know the student, you can have someone else who is more familiar with them fill it out right away. This will help provide the counselor with a brief and general summary of the student's appearance, their peers, and any behavioral issues. And so that helps the counselor in their assessment process. And this is what that form looks like. So at the top you fill it out, and then the behaviors, you go through those. So again, ensure that you complete the entire form. Now, whenever we have completed the assessment and the student is safe to go back to school or dorm, we have different type of protective steps that come in play post-screening or post-threat. The student should always be within eyesight of staff during the post-screening or post-assessment period for the entire duration of the request. The counselor will make recommendation of perhaps 24-hour period, 48 hours, 72 hours. This does not mean you need to be glued to their side, but keeping a watchful eye on them. Everyone at TSD is responsible for student safety and making sure he or she is accounted for where they should be. This has happened in the past. Do not send the student to the health center alone at any time. Whether it be for medication or other reasons, the student needs to be monitored. They cannot be sent alone. Students should also be monitored in the cafeteria. I know that time of day is very busy, but they need to have support. And report any and all concerns immediately to the counselor or the supervisor on duty. Follow the recommendations given by the screener or counselors. This includes whether it's safe for the student to go off campus or not. You should receive a list outlining anything of that nature and any special requests that need to be followed. Generally speaking, they should be monitored. If you're uncertain, ask a counselor, please. Your responsibility as TSD staff include ongoing monitoring of warning signs or suicidal thoughts, ensuring that students are where they are supposed to be, offering support when appropriate. Doesn't mean that you refrain from providing support, that you provide them as appropriate, as well as providing immediate feedback about behaviors or concerns to appropriate staff, including counselors, behavior support team, principals, and others. So often, it comes down to a single caring staff that can make a huge difference in the life of a student. Thank you for your role and contribution in creating an environment at TSD where every student can learn, grow, and belong with your support. Thank you.